This could have serious implications for the GAA right across the country. We'll be going over there in a short while to talk to RT's Pascal Sheehy to see what's happening down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. First, though, this report from Ethna O'Brien tells what's been going on.
In 1999, Cork hurlers returned to a hero's welcome after winning the Liam McCarthy Cup. But just 3 years on, hurling in the rebel county is in crisis. For the first time in GAA history, the senior hurling team has gone on strike. But the situation in Cork didn't happen overnight.
Historically, relations in Cork between players and county board have been quite poor. In fact, you can go back to the 70s, where the entire Cork football team were suspended for 6 months, with 2 exceptions, over a gear crisis. And there's been a sense in Cork amongst the players that the county board haven't been as proactive as in other counties, and that the players haven't benefited to the degree that perhaps other counties have. Things reached a low during the summer, where the players aligned themselves with the Gaelic Players Association. Cork were one of the last counties for the players to join, but led by their goalkeeper Donald O'Cusack, they joined, and that created friction within a very conservative county board.
Despite Cork having one of the richest GAA boards with assets in the region of €14 million, last Friday their hurlers held a press conference and announced that they were going on strike after talks with their board over travel, ticket allocation and playing kits broke down.
Take the gear issue, for example. I mean, the players are asking for 2 pairs of socks and 2 pairs of shorts, stuff like that, to be made available. I mean, it seems extraordinary in this day and age, where the GAA have gate receipts of 30 million, Croke Park is attracting 80,000 people, that should even be an issue. And I think there will be massive public sympathy behind the players and stuff like that. They're looking for membership to gyms. In Armagh, there are 4 gyms available to the players. They won in All-Ireland this year. In Cork, players have paid €620 of their own money to join gyms so that they can train to play for the team.
And I don't think the players would be taking this action if they knew that there wasn't some financial resources there behind them. You know, the money has been steamrolling in. They get major championship games every year. They get lots of field rental from those games. Like, they've had 9 high-profile games this summer. It was the same last year. The players know that the money is there, but they're looking for respect. They're looking for the money to be pumped into them.
And this dispute could escalate. Already the Cork footballers have indicated that they may join the strike. But is it just a Cork problem, or will we see further signs of player unrest across the country over the coming months?
It's a local spat now, but it will have national implications. Whereas before, a team or a county would have thought very, very hard about putting any action into implementation. It's going to be quite easy now. The Cork hurlers, what they did last Friday was historic. It was courageous, as Desi Farrell, the GPA chief, said. It's going to make sure that no county is going to be afraid to stand up for themselves from now on. The way is forward. You know, people are going to pick up on this. They don't have to break the ground. It's already been broken. And I think now that the players will have no fear. And, you know, it's going to be a whole new ballgame for the GAA.
Tonight, the Cork County Board are meeting to discuss the crisis. But whatever problems there are off the field, what will ultimately matter for the fans is the players' performance on it.
I think there will be massive public sympathy initially with the players when people see the circumstances in which they've had to prepare. But if management are forced to back down and if selectors move out, I think there's then an onus on players to perform. I think it'll be a case of the players, having done their talking off the pitch, will then have to produce on the pitch. Cork won in All-Ireland with this same group of players 3 years ago, and I think they themselves will know better than anybody that the public could turn very quickly if they underperform next year.
Ethna O'Brien reporting there. I'm now going over to Cork and to Pascal Sheehy. Pascal, first of all, what's happening there at the moment? Is the county board meeting still going on?
Yes, it is, and in fact we've got some more detail than we had earlier on. In actual fact, what has happened here is the county board has given its account of the negotiations that have taken place with the players over the past 2 months. And what we have heard is that they're prepared to concede, I think, on very many of the demands, such as the presence of a medical doctor at every one of the league and championship games, the access by the players and members of the panel to a physiotherapist. There would be improvements, and we'll say issues like arrangements for the players feeding or having a meal after the game. And there will also be other improvements as well, which we'll hear about in just a moment. I think just to go back on this, the reason why we have arrived at this position is there has been a breakdown of trust and a breakdown of respect between the players the selection committee and the county board. And when you see players demanding or having to write down demands for, we'll say, 6 hurleys at the beginning of a season, it's illustrative of a breakdown in communications between them and the executive. And the county board has said that it is prepared to re-enter negotiations with the players, and it has made certain concessions to the players.
Pascal, I believe you've got the incoming county chairman with you there, haven't you? You're going to have a word with him.
Yes, I am. I'm joined here by the incoming chairman of the Cork County Board, Jim Forbes. Jim, can you give us more specifics which might convince the players to go back into negotiations with you?
Well, Pascal, you know, we're always willing and able, and we hope that in the very near future that negotiations will be reopened between the executive committee of the board and the hurlers. And you know, most of the requests that they have made of us, I think we can meet most of those. You know, there are some that are a national involvement that the Cork County Board cannot deal with. But I have no doubt that we'll be making some recommendations with regard to that as well.
There was a call at the meeting just a moment ago to accede to all of the players' requests where those requests aren't governed by rule by the Central Council. Why can't you simply do that?
Well, I mean, we were in the process of doing that, you know, and there were certain aspects that we had to clarify with our medical people, etc., before we could really nail it down, you know. So that's the reason why, you know, there were some items that needed to be clarified. We had intended doing that at the third meeting between the players and the executive, but that was the meeting that never took place.
Do you think now that it's going to be possible to resolve this dispute before it escalates further? The footballers are, after all, meeting tomorrow night to consider their positions.
I think it can, yeah. You know, as I said at the outset, you know, the executive of the board, and I have been myself personally in contact with one of the players as well, you know. I think that we can, you know, we're extending the hand of friendship to the players to sit down with us, and we want to pursue this and get a speedily resolved, and I would hope kind of that we can do that before the end of this year.
Okay, Jim Forbes, thank you very much. Just before I hand back to you, Miriam, there has been one major development here tonight, and that is this year's Cork Senior Hurling Selection Committee have resigned. It had been speculated throughout the day that they might tender their resignation. I understand, though, that that was in the balance right up to the last hour before the meeting, because one of the selectors was not anxious to retire or to step down. But that has now been confirmed to the meeting, so Cork will start the new season, if there is to be a Cork team participating in the National League and the Championship, with a new management team.
Okay, Pascal, thanks a million for that, and thanks to Jim Forbes as well for joining you tonight. Right, Desi Farrell, let's move the story on. Listening there to Jim Forbes, do you think that will be enough for the Cork players?
I'm not sure, Miriam, and I don't mean to give you a short answer, but I'm sure the finer details will have to prevail here, and I think the players will take some time to digest what's actually happened tonight. From what we can see, there seems to be somewhat of a conciliatory tone tonight, but there's possibly further to go.
The resignation of the selection committee, is that important, do you think?
Yes, that was definitely one of the issues at hand here, and while the Cork hurlers did not refuse to play under that present selection committee, they did not wish to have to do so. So I think the fact that that selection committee has resigned looks very encouraging.
Eugene McGee, as a close observer of GAA and GAA politics for decades, what's your read on what Jim Forbes was saying and what the players might do?
Well, it looks as if the county board, or at least the chairman of the county board and the executive, are anxious to get a settlement. But as Leslie said, you know, there's fine print in every proposal. I think for Cork, like, you know, the most worrying thing is that it came to this. I mean, this is the first time in the history of the GAA that players have went on strike en masse like this, and it happened in County Cork, one of the great GAA counties. I think myself that it's symptomatic of problems in lots of other places as well, not as in a dramatic fashion as Cork. We need a new parameter set for the relationship between county boards and players, because county boards in general are operating on the old principle of going back centuries, that players are no better than hired hands. They turned up and we put on the matches for them and we take the money. and we will decide what to do with the money. And the players, it's none of their business what we do with our money. So long they're there to play, we are there to administrate. And I think, you know, times have changed. That day is gone. There'll have to be more compromise.
Do you think, Jesse, that's the way the players do feel?
Yes, I think for a long time that has been the prevailing sense amongst the GA population. But in modern day society, the substandard treatment of players was never going to last much longer. And
what were the big issues, Desi? I mean, we've read loads about it, but for you and your knowledge of the situation, what broke the camel's back? What was the big problem?
Well, the GPA have pursued issues on a national level, but there was obviously those same concerns down here, but there was also local, more complex issues at hand. And like the core issues, for example, were the training facilities. Players weren't entitled to free membership in a locally available gym, you know, which in this day and age, while players have to adhere to professional standards and professional standards is expected of them, you'd think that that would be reciprocated some way. Other issues, like they had a problem with the medical setup, whereby team doctor wasn't available for every game, which in this day and age, I think there's one particular harrowing story where they travelled the length of the country by bus from Cork to Derry. A player was injured, and on the return leg they couldn't stop the bleeding. Eventually, when he got back to Cork, his parents had to bring him to the hospital. So in this day and age, to treat our top stars in such haphazard and substandard ways is absolutely ridiculous.
I think, Miriam, one of the problems behind a lot of the concern with players all over Ireland is the fact that the GA doesn't seem to have taken cognizance of the increased role of wives and partners in players' lives, because as the game has got more sophisticated and more and more coaching and training and so on and so forth, players are away from home more often, right? They're missing overtime. Their income may be affected. And when most players don't complain about that, they're not very happy about it. And certainly, you know, a young married man with a wife and a mortgage and a couple of kids, maybe, that's a huge factor. And I don't think that has been taken into consideration. The GA is still operating on the basis of 40 or 50 years ago, when if a woman married a famous county player, I mean, literally they'd crawl on their hands and knees for the honour and glory of it. That day is long gone, and I think, you know, that hasn't been taken into account.
So is it all about respect? Is it just all about being treated well? Is this what it's about?
Absolutely. I think the issues at hand here were basic fundamental rights, and players now adhere to professional standards, and for them to have to be subjected to treatment like we've seen in this particular situation is just a non-runner.
Without incurring the wrath of every GAA player in the country, but they're not professionals, they are amateurs, and maybe is there a bit of, they're looking at maybe their colleagues who play soccer and they see the way they get treated, but they don't get treated the same, but they play a different game, they play an amateur game, and therefore the rules are different, aren't they?
Absolutely, we are amateurs, but I think the dogs on the street know at this stage that while we are amateurs, we train and prepare in a professional manner, and I think for a long time now there's been some paranoia and suspicion viewed with players agitating, and when we hear talk of players withdrawing their services, people become very sceptical. But I was at a meeting that was convened by the Cork Hurlers there some weeks back, and I came away from that meeting saying that these players aren't about professionalism, they're not about pay for play, they're very passionate about their belief in Cork Hurling and safeguarding the future of Cork Hurling.
I think the fact that GA players are amateur has been grasped by some officials who don't think too clearly as an excuse for treating them like the amateurs of 100 years ago, in other words, like serfs. They may be amateur, and they are amateur, and this proves, by the way, that the GPA and the people who are members of the GPA, like most of these players, they're not concerned with being paid to play football or hurling. They are concerned with better facilities. The one word that always permeates any player who makes a case like this is respect. The players, rightly or wrongly, feel that they do not get the respect that their efforts deserve from administrators.
Could this be a big national problem for the GAA?
Well, it will be, because this is certainly going to alert a lot of other counties. I mean, you know, problems like this don't just occur in Cork, they occur in the weaker counties as well. And the weaker counties of the GAA, the players there spend as much time training and preparing as the Corks or the Kerrys, and they get no reward at all. They never win anything, whereas at least Cork win in Ireland every so often. So it'll certainly activate interest around the country. In most counties, players are very well looked after, it has to be said, the vast majority of counties, because there's sensible administrators, they understand the bond there should be between administrators and players, and they look after them well, and there are no problems. And the Dublin county team is going off to South Africa on a fantastic holiday and so on and so forth, and Armagh the same. So it's the exception, but at the same time, this is going to it's going to raise hairs in a lot of places, definitely.
Desi, as a last one, what's your instinct? Do you think it'll be resolved tonight, tomorrow morning?
I'd like to think so. It depends on whether or not substantive movement has been made on these particular issues for the Cork hurlers. Obviously they've become very entrenched, and it's a mark of and a sign, an indicator of their frustration and desperation that they had to withdraw their services.
Okay, Desi Farrell, Eugene McGee. I know you could talk about it for hours, but we've run out of time. Thanks both very much. Well, that's all from Mark and myself for tonight.